Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see England during Victorian age. The Victorian age refers to the period when Queen Victoria reigned in England from 1837 to 1901, and this was a period when England saw unprecedented industrial growth, urban expansion, colonial expansion, and they were also strict moral codes. And this era represents the zenith of Britain's imperial power and a complex moment of social transformation. Under Queen Victoria's rule, England not only consolidated its global leadership, but it also underwent tremendous changes in its domestic structures, values, and institutions. It is said to be an age of contradictions between progress and poverty, wealth and inequality, enlightenment and conservatism. When we see the political background on governors, we find that Queen Victoria ascended the throne at the age of 18 and she became a symbol of national unity and morality. Her reign witnessed political stability. She maintained close relationships with Queen Prime Ministers like Lord Melbourne, Sir Robert Peel, and Benjamin Disraeli. The reform bills played a major role in shaping the political landscape during her reign. The Reform Act of 1832, which preceded Victoria's reign, had already broadened the electorate. Later acts such as the Second Reform Bill Act and the Third Reform Act expanded voting rights to a wider section of the male population, moving Britain closer to democratic governance. This period also witnessed the rise of political parties and the emergence of the liberal and conservative parties. Figures like William Gladstone and Disraeli embodied the ideological divide of the age, with Gladstone favouring reform and free trade while Disraeli focused on empire and tradition. Industrial economic progress were enormous, synonymous to the Victorian era, with Industrial Revolution, which actually transformed Britain from an agrarian economy into the world's foremost industrial power. The expansion of industries such as textiles, coal mining, steel, and shipbuilding created enormous wealth and jobs. Inventions like the steam engine, spinning jenny, and power loom revolutionized the railway network, expanded the country, transformed communication and commerce. England's global trade was facilitated by improved ports and shipping lines, and the British Empire became the largest colonial power, controlling vast territories in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. However, industrial growth also created deep social problems, including poor working conditions, child labor, slum housing, and pollution. The working class living in harsh urban environments began to organize, leading to the rise of trade unions and labor movements. In social reforms and changing class structures, we find social inequality was one of the major issues of the Victorian age. The upper and the middle class enjoyed luxuries and privileges, while the working class and poor lived in appalling conditions. This contrast gave rise to several reform movements aimed at improving living and working conditions. The Factory Acts, Mines Act, and Public Health Acts were introduced to regulate labor, particularly that of women and children, and improve sanitation in cities. The Education Act of the 1870 made elementary education accessible, marking the beginning of state funded schooling. Middle class values such as respectability, hard work, thrift, and duty became dominant. The Victorian woman was expected to be a model of virtue and domesticity. While women had limited legal rights, this period laid the groundwork for the women's suffrage movement. In religion and morality, the Victorian age was deeply religious. The Church of England remained dominant, but it faced challenges from evangelists, nonconformists, and the Oxford movement, which sought to restore Catholic traditions with Anglicanism. Victorians emphasized strict moral value chastity, modesty, discipline, and self control. These values permeated literature, family life, and public behavior. The period was also known for its philanthropic endeavors, including the founding of charity schools, orphanages, and missionary societies. Literature and culture produced during the Victorian England, we can find some of the greatest literary minds in the English language. The novel reflected social realities, moral dilemmas, and the struggles of individuals in a rapidly changing world. Charles Dickens, through novels like Oliver Twist, Hard Times, and David Copperfield, highlighted the plight of the poor and the need for social reform. Thomas Hardy depicted rural decline and human suffering. Charlotte and Emily Bronte, George Eliot, and Elizabeth Gaskell contributed significantly to women's voices in literature. Poetry also flourished, with poets like Alfred Tennyson, Robert Browning, and Matthew Arnold shaping the intellectual spirit of the age. Tennyson, as poet laureate, reflected the hopes and anxieties of Victorian society. The Victorian period also saw the rise of realism in art, the popularity of theatre, and the influence of moralistic magazines and newspapers, which shaped public taste. Empire and foreign affairs, we can say the phrase the sun never sets on the British Empire was accurate for this era. Colonial expansion literature glorified empire and the idea of the white man's burden became prevalent. However, the empire was also a source of conflict and rebellion, such as the Indian Rebellion of 1857, which led to direct crown rule over India. Under Queen Victoria, who was declared Empress of India in 1876, the British Empire became a symbol of national pride. At the same time, imperialism created radical hierarchies, economic exploitation, and cultural destruction in many parts of the world. Science and intellectual development during the Victorian era was also an era of scientific and intellectual ferment. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, published in On the Origin of Species, shook the foundations of traditional religious beliefs and gave rise to fierce debates between science and religion. The industrial and scientific revolutions led to major discoveries in medicine, engineering, chemistry, and physics. The public was increasingly exposed to new ideas through popular science journals, public lectures, and exhibitions. Thinkers like John Stuart Mill and Herbert Spencer influenced philosophical and political thought, especially regarding liberty, utilitarianism, and individual rights. Queen Victoria's reign came to an end in 1901 after 64 years on the throne. She had become a symbol of stability, duty, and empire, earning the affectionate title of Grandmother of Europe due to her many royal descendants across European monarchies. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box, like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.